On December 10th, 1980, Ugandans lined up for hours to vote. For the first time in 10 years, they had a chance to choose their own leader. By the next morning, one man declared victory. Another man walked out of the counting hall, drove west, and started a war with 27 guns and 27 men. That decision kicked off a 5-year bush war that killed over 500,000 people. It put a 41-year-old rebel in charge of Uganda, and 45 years later, that same man is still president. This is the story of Uganda's 1980 election and why it still shapes the country in 2026. To understand 1980, you have to understand 1979. Idi Amin had ruled Uganda through terror for 8 years. By the time Tanzanian forces and Ugandan exiles drove him out in April 1979, the country was broken. The economy had collapsed. The army was split into dozens of rival militias. For the next 20 months, Uganda was run by a rotating cast of transitional governments. Presidents came and went in months. Yusuf Lule lasted 68 days. Godfrey Binaisa lasted a year before he was ousted in a coup. Everyone agreed on one thing. Uganda needed an election, but nobody agreed on how to run it. By late 1980, 3 main forces were competing for power. First, Milton Obote and the Uganda People's Congress, or UPC. Obote had been Uganda's first prime minister after independence in 1962. He was ousted by Amin in 1971 and spent the 1970s in exile. Now he was back, and he had the backing of the military and the northern regions. Second, the Democratic Party, or DP. Led by Paul Semogerere, the DP had deep support in Uganda and among Catholics. They positioned themselves as the moderate alternative to Obote's old guard. Third, the Uganda Patriotic Movement, or UPM. This was the party of a little-known guerrilla leader named Yoweri Museveni. His party was new, underfunded, and had almost no national base. But Museveni had one thing the others didn't: a gun. Voting took place on December 10th, 1980. On paper, it looked democratic. 1.6 million people registered. Polling stations opened across the country. In reality, it was messy. There were reports of ballot stuffing in the north, where Obote's UPC was strongest. In Uganda, DP supporters claimed soldiers were intimidating voters. In some areas, ballot boxes disappeared entirely. International observers from the Commonwealth said the election was free and fair. But even they noted irregularities and a lack of transparency in the vote counting. When the results came in, UPC won 74 seats in Parliament. The Democratic Party got 50. Museveni's UPM won just 1 seat. Milton Obote was declared president. DP leaders called foul immediately. They claimed the election was rigged and demanded a recount. The Commonwealth observers stood by their report, but privately admitted the process was flawed. Museveni didn't ask for a recount. He walked out. Museveni had seen this before. In 1966, Obote had overthrown the constitution and suspended parliament. In 1971, Amin overthrew Obote. Uganda's pattern was clear. If you lost the fight for power politically, you fought for it militarily. So in February 1981, Museveni and a small group of fighters attacked a military barracks in Mubende. They stole 27 guns. The National Resistance Army, or NRA, was born. For the next 5 years, the NRA fought a guerrilla war against Obote's government. The war was brutal. Obote's army responded with mass killings in the Luwero Triangle. Hundreds of thousands died. By 1985, Obote was overthrown again, this time by his own general, Tito Okello. But it was too late. In January 1986, Museveni's NRA marched into Kampala and took power. The man who won 1 seat in 1980 became president without an election. So why does a 45-year-old election still matter? Because it set the rules of Ugandan politics. First, it created the belief that elections don't change power. After 1980, both the opposition and the government have treated elections as managed processes, not real contests. That perception hurts trust today. Second, it put Yoweri Museveni in power, and he's never left. The war he started in response to 1980 gave him the legitimacy to rule. For 40 years, his government has used that history to justify staying in control. Third, it entrenched regional and ethnic divides. The 1980 election split the country along north-south lines. Those divisions still influence voting patterns and political alliances today. You can see it in every election since 1996, 2001, 2016, 2021. The complaints are the same: rigging, military interference, disputed results. The players change. The script doesn't, and it's not just Uganda. Across East Africa, the 1980 election is studied as a case study in what happens when an election loses credibility. Once people believe the system is rigged, they stop playing by the rules. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. Uganda's 1980 election wasn't just about who won 74 seats. It was about whether Ugandans would trust the ballot box. When that trust broke, the gun took over. Today, Uganda is more stable than it was in the 1980s, but the shadow of that election is still there. Every time there's a disputed vote, every time the military is on the streets, people remember 1980. So the real question isn't who won in 1980. It's whether the lesson was learned. If you found this breakdown useful, hit subscribe. Next week, we're covering why Rwanda's 1994 genocide happened faster than anyone expected and what the international community missed. Comment below. Do you think elections in East Africa are more credible today than they were in 1980? I read every comment. And if you want the sources I used for this video, check the description. I listed every book and article. See you in the next one.